I saw a podcast and the question was asked about whether you would check your child's phone and how old they should be when they get it. Now, this was on a podcast shared to me by one of the members of the community, so shout out Dee for putting this to me. And it made me think of a question or two about discipline and the boundaries that you set, because this was put to a panel of like 8 or 10 people who are parents and are on different spectrums of the discipline scale. So some are called free range parents, where they kind of let their kids do almost what they want, and the other ones are a bit more, they believed in discipline in some form or another. And it was interesting putting that question towards them about, would you check your kid's phone, and if you would check it in front of them, or if you would check it behind their back when they don't even know. And it made me wonder if that's kind of like, where do you draw the line on that? Because it's almost, I don't want to say invading privacy, but you also are at that point, I feel like, when your kid is old enough to get a phone. And for me and wifey, we've kind of discussed this, it would be around the age, probably around 13, maybe like early teens, where they start maybe catching public transport, or we leave them to have alternate transportation, getting to and from like sports games, after school activities, all that kind of thing. And we just want to be able to stay in touch, in case of emergency, in case they need us, pick us up from somewhere they're stuck or something like that. That's kind of the age where I started to get my first phone. And I know that's many, many years ago now, but my parents never checked, and I don't think maybe they had the ability to check, but aside maybe from seeing a call log, but even then you just see numbers, like you don't even know who it belongs to. And it's something that I thought would make me feel more independent, and it did. But I can't imagine now, in the era of smartphones and different apps and all the different ways there could be trouble, for younger people exploring the internet and online social media and all that. So I really wanted to put that question to a lot of people. At what age do you think you would let your kid have a phone? And since it's you giving it to them, it's not really their property, do you feel entitled to check? Do you feel like you have an obligation to check what they do, what they get up to, and all that? And I wanted to touch on this with the question in mind in regards to discipline. I feel like setting boundaries or being strict it's a bit of a touchy subject for some people, but I feel like we can get into some good stuff. So if you do want to contribute to any of the podcasts, have your say, or put in your little bits of advice or questions that you'd like to see talked about, you can submit a question through the Google form in the description. And you can also drop a comment on whether you're watching this on YouTube, on Spotify, on whatever podcast platform. You can drop a comment. You can contact me directly through email, or down in the description you'll also find a link to the website. You can submit questions through there. Any social media DMs, hit me up anytime at all. I would love nothing more than to make this a community-based thing where we can share our knowledge, we can learn from each other, make this a basis that people can come to when they need help, advice, or anything like that. So I highly encourage you to get involved. I would really love that. I think we can make something good. So when we're on the topic of whatever the podcast is, we have to align it to a drink. And for the topic of discipline, I thought it'd be fitting to have a protein shake. So I will be sipping on a nice chocolate protein shake. I won't be giving away the brand name because there's no ad, there's no sponsorship. But I feel like a protein shake is kind of one of those things where when you're trying to get fit, you're trying to be disciplined and trying to take care of yourself. That's that one drink. I couldn't think of anything else to associate, discipline and keeping yourself in check. So when it comes to disciplining a kid, and this is kind of like we're talking about the framework in which you want to set for your kid's development. So do you want to have boundaries on, how they act towards you, towards other people, how they treat themselves, how they treat other people, and the way they behave either socially, at home, whatever that might be, whatever that looks like. I feel like we, as parents, we kind of want the best for our kids. So if we do think we're going to keep things reined in and we're going to keep them in check about what they say to other people, what they say to us, that we're doing that out of their best interests. And so I think the main job as a parent, we all pretty much need to remember, especially as dads out there, that the boundaries we set them as kids and the way we help them learn how to behave, we're kind of setting themselves up for what they're going to be like as adults. And so keeping that in mind, I'm sure we all want our kids to succeed and be the best version of themselves, and we don't want them to feel constrained or that they can't be who they want to be. But at the same time, you want to keep some behaviors in check, because not everything that you can get away with as a kid, you can get away with as an adult. Sure, you can skip doing homework and you can not be in trouble with your parents, but also when you're older, if you don't do your job, you're likely to get fired. Again, that's generalizing. You can have your own business. You're not going to fire yourself. But if things don't get done that they need to as an adult, the responsibility lies on you and ultimately no one else. But you only got to how you are today through the guidance of your parents and everyone else around you, the community that helped raise you. So I think setting boundaries and having some discipline in place is one of those really important things. So the question really is, how much do you police your child's behavior? As a dad, I think you take on the responsibility of showing your kids, whether it's inadvertently, whether you mean it or not, your kids will learn so much from you. And so one of the topics that comes up a lot when it comes to discipline, rightly or wrongly, is spanking. And that's probably something that has gone and disappeared out of existence for a lot of people, but not completely. I feel like there's a lot of people who still keep up with the tradition, in quote unquote tradition, of discipline equals spanking. And I wouldn't say that's the case for everybody. So let me start this by saying I did receive a lot of spanks when I was a kid, only when I deserved it. My dad, even as a young adult and as a dad myself now, one of the pieces of advice he bestowed upon me was, don't be angry. If you're going to spank your child because they've done something you can't talk them out of and they don't understand right from wrong yet, and you have to let them know that behavior is not going to fly, don't be angry, because that translates, and you want to be level-headed. You don't want to hit a kid. And I got it on the butt. I got it on my hand, whatever. Wooden spoon was a very rare occurrence, but that was pulled out as a threat. Same with the belt. I don't think I ever got hit with the belt, but just being shown the belt as a kid put the fear in me. And the way that I've progressed, whatever experiences I had as a kid, to my children, I don't think that I want to be the parent who spanks their kids, and I've tried everything I can not to be. And I think at some point you got to understand what it's for. It's just a tool. It's a tool, and it can't be the only tool. There's no way that a healthy, in my opinion, a healthy upbringing is one tool and that's it. You can't just have spankings and nothing else. So I really enjoyed learning about this kind of thing in high school and through university when I took a lot of psych subjects and counseling and that kind of thing. And one of the first things that you learn in the basic psych classes is levels of reinforcement. So you have things like positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and punishment are the three main categories that you'd say what we use as humans to keep each other in check, as parents to keep our kids in check and raise each other. So positive reinforcement is probably the ideal that's what we'd want to say. We're encouraging our kids when they do something right. We praise them. We tell them what a good job. We reward the good behavior. The problem with that is you have to consistently reward good behavior. And so how do you do that when you're not around them 24/7? So that works until a point. We have negative reinforcement, which you'd probably have to use these in tandem. You negatively reinforce their behaviors. So telling them, no, you shouldn't do that. No, that's bad, etc. Again, hard to do all that when you're not around 24/7. So it's good to, reinforce the good things that you see, negatively reinforce the bad things you see. And hopefully the idea is as they get older, they can differentiate themselves, which is a good behavior, which is a bad behavior. The punishment side of things is something where a behavior will have a reaction and an outcome. So if you do something bad, this bad thing will happen to you, or this bad thing will happen, or you will face this consequence. So one of the ways punishment, although it's not one of the things people like to think is good, it's hard to positively reinforce or negatively reinforce a young kid. So my kids, when they were learning to walk, when they were taking their first steps, walking around the house, getting into situations where, you can't run and chase them, don't touch that every time. I mean, you have to for a while, but they can get into some pretty dangerous situations because they're just exploring. And so whilst you don't want to be a hover helicopter around them the whole time, if they're going to reach for, say, a power cord, obviously you're trying to keep your house safe. You try and keep those things out of the kids' grasp, or anywhere they can get to. But say they continuously reach for something they're not supposed to, like the top of the TV or the top of a shelf, which they could pull on themselves. Obviously, you're trying to make your house safe, but you still want them to learn there's certain things you can't do. You can't go for all the door handles. You can't go for the front door. You can't, pull on the cat's tail or something. So one of the things you would do is, kids don't understand completely positive or negative, praising them for not touching the door handle. How can you do that? So if they go for it, you give them a little slap on the hand or something, like enough not to hurt them, but to shock them, to say, oh, you shouldn't do that. Oh, that happened to me when I reached for this door. Let me try it again. It happens again. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get this little, whatever this is, this slap on the hand. I don't like it. And that was probably the extent of where it went to with my kids. That was the only thing that would happen. And I think because we went into it, myself and wifey, we had the discussion when, new kids were coming, and then you have the discussions continuously when you're getting in situations, how you want to approach things, and you try and be on the same field. You want to be on the same page. We both agreed that we didn't want to be hitting our kids for no reason, for everything. Did not want to do that at all. And in the very maybe one or two situations where they did something dangerous and I wanted to shut that behavior down real quick, that was the only time a slap on the hand or something would come out. And for the most part, we try to really encourage good behavior, discourage bad behavior. And I think that's helpful until they get to, you need all the tools you can get until they get to the age where logic and reasoning can start to work and they can be talked to and start to understand what you're saying to them to differentiate right from wrong. And, it could be little behaviors like when they are playing with other kids, they might start pulling on another kid's hair. And that's the question of how much do you discipline your kids? Do you watch like a hawk and everything they do, you reinforce, punish, or otherwise? Like if you see your kid playing with another kid, they're learning how to interact socially with another kid. But it's that question of how much do you interfere when they go down the route of like hair pulling, or they're pushing each other, or like they snatch a toy off each other and they're not sharing. How much do you intervene and not let them explore for themselves and face whatever punishment comes or whatever negative thing happens? So if you don't let your kid steal something from another kid, and the natural reaction might be the other kid cries, you might be avoiding that situation where your kid learns, hey, if I steal this other kid will cry. Or maybe the other kid will push them back, and you're not giving your kid the chance to see, hey, if I steal this kid's going to push me back. I don't like that. Or maybe I do like that. Let me tease him some more. So these outcomes, you don't know what you're avoiding. So I find this so interesting that everyone has a different level to which they will discipline their kids. And the one thing I think everyone wants their kids to do is to be social and be able to fit in and play with other kids. So there's a balance, because there are some parents out there, and I don't know if you think you know somebody like this, chances are this is pretty accurate. If you don't know anyone like this, chances are I'm talking about you. So I apologize in advance, but there are some parents who don't do anything to stop their kids being annoying, and not like cheeky as kids can get, but annoying. Like they'll go up and scream in the faces of other adults, or they'll snatch and steal, or they won't listen to what anyone says. Like, you can't have that, they'll just take it. Or you can't touch that, they'll touch it. And they'll look at you and they'll smile, and they'll be testing the boundaries, and they know they can get away with it because their parents have not set a strict structure at all, whatever level of strictness that is. They're kind of like, we'll set a boundary that is very broad, and the kid they don't know where the limit is, essentially. So don't be that. Don't be that, because that is the most annoying thing when you want your kids to play with another kid, or you want to hang out with the parents because they're friends, but the kids don't get along, and you can't. How do you tell another parent, hey, look, your kid's annoying, fix it? Like, you can't do it. It's one of those things you can't tell another parent. And it's amazing that some people don't see it. And it makes you wonder sometimes, is my kid like that? Have I let my kid run wild? And I'd like to think they don't. I'd like to think they're polite and they use their manners, and they don't snatch, and they don't talk back, and they don't do all the stuff that I don't want kids to do to me. But yeah. And I think that comes from a place of me wanting to know that my kid is going to be prepared for the world in the way that I see it. And the way I see it might not be the best way, might not be the right way, it might be the wrong way, but it's the only way that I know how. It's the only way wifey knows as well. Things like using your manners, things like being able to fit in an environment, being able to speak up when they need to, being strong, independent, but also being able to interact with other kids, being able to interact with other people, and not being too shy, not being overconfident and annoying, finding that balance. And so tying that all together with the phone conversation, because first of all, the age at which some people think it's okay to have a phone differs amongst people. So for me, I think young teen, when kids are hanging out, or like I said, have to start taking their own transport home, finding their way around. Maybe they go start hanging out with friends, going to the movies, all that kind of thing. Whether the movies are around in the future, who knows? But I think at 8 years old, there's no reason to have a phone. My kids will play on a tablet on occasion, but that's a sometimes thing. That's not an everyday thing, because you don't want them to fall behind being able to use technology, but at the same time, I want them to grow up exploring the environment, playing, being bored, learning how to be bored and how to cope and find something fun out of nothing. When it comes to checking, I'm not sure I would be comfortable checking their phone because I wouldn't want them to feel like they don't have privacy and they can't have secrets, because I think that's fine and I think that's healthy and I think that's something that should happen. As a parent, I'm not going to know everything, and I don't think I expect to know everything. The only balance of that is I would like to know if they had something they wanted to talk about or they needed to share, or I needed to know to help them, but they didn't know how to talk to me. So I think that's the building blocks that are in place at my kids' ages, at like 6, 7, 8 years old, putting in the building blocks to know, for them to know that they can trust me, and sometimes they can admit things to me and they won't get in trouble. So sure, we want to discipline our kids if they do something wrong, but at the same time, if they know they've done something wrong and they recognize it and they feel bad about it, it could be something trivial. It could be like spilling a drink on the table or dropping something on the floor. I want them to know that it's okay and they're not going to get told off, or they're not going to get, I'm not going to raise my voice because they know they stuffed up. They feel bad about it, and there's no need to add on to that pressure or that pain that they feel. And so if there is a problem, they can talk to me about it and not feel like my first instinct will be to pile on. Hopefully they know the first thing that will happen will be reinforcement, or a cuddle, or, me just listening. I don't want to check their phone and their apps, although I know there's this neurotic part of me that will need to know what is happening 24/7. I'm just going to have to ignore it or try and shut that down, because I don't want to have that relationship where everything that I do has to be a discipline thing. I want to be able to have that relationship with my kids, that we can talk, we can joke around, and it's not always me being the dad, without forgetting that I am the dad and that's what I'm there for. Yeah, it's just finding that balance. It's hard. And the reason I think it's hard is because you don't want something bad to happen to your kids. Especially as a dad, you can get very protective. You don't want bad things to happen to them, but they also, but you also know they need to have bad things happen to them, because that's just life. And at the end of the day, we're not going to be around forever to protect them from everything, and potentially protecting them from every single thing and making them avoid every mistake, like not letting them find out the consequence of doing something wrong, or not letting them learn that if they pull out this building block, the whole tower is going to collapse on top of them. They're not going to get hurt, but let them do that. Let them make that mistake. Let them knock the cup off the edge of the table and figure out the consequence of all that. I think it can be very easy to micromanage everything that they do and try and make them avoid mistakes and avoid bad things happening, because we want to protect them, but that might not be the best thing all the time. One of the scariest parts of being a dad is knowing that sometimes you have no control and you have no way of protecting your kids from everything that will come in life. And you have to remember that your job, I think at the end of the day, is just to make sure that they can withstand whatever comes, that they have the tools to be able to deal with things, and that if they need you, you'll be there. So I think that's the end of episode 3. One more little thing. If you could please drop a like or a 5-star rating on one of the podcast apps, like it on YouTube, leave a comment down below. Anything to get the algorithm going would really help a ton. I will catch you guys next week for episode 4. And like I said, I would love to have you involved. If you do want to drop anything, any knowledge, any bits of advice, any questions, please let me know. My name is Mingers. This has been Sips and Dad Tips, and I will catch you guys next week.